Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're joined by Kim Atherton. Kim is the Chief People Officer at Ovo Energy. Kim, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Really happy to have you on the show. Kim, tell us a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Sure. So I started my career as an occupational psychologist, which these days probably isn't that unusual to become a chief people officer and go into HR afterwards. But at the time, I remember making the transition and feeling really nervous. So I spent the first 7 years of my career consulting with a small boutique consultancy called Kaizen Consulting, who were then acquired by Deloitte Human Capital. And that was an amazing grounding because I got to work with lots and lots of different businesses. So I got to do lots of global travel, which was really fun when you're in your 20s. And I got to work with large corporates like HSBC or Deloitte, Novartis, and so forth. And I got to look at some of the both organisational problems that these companies were facing, but also very much deep dive with their senior leadership team. So I did a lot of board composition and senior coaching of CEOs and so forth. Then I went on to have a family and realised that travelling around the world was less conducive to being at home with babies. So I looked around for an internal role. And I was considering offers from some of my previous clients to go and work for big corporates. And I got a call from a headhunter and they said, go and have a chat to this really small startup because we think that this guy, this founder of the startup has got a really great vision for talent that I think would fit with yours. They're looking for someone in HR, but actually we think that you could do it. And I thought, oh my goodness, all right, go on then, I'll go and have a coffee. And I went and met my owner-founder of Ovo Energy, Stephen Fitzpatrick. And at the time, Ovo Energy were, or still are, a utility. We provide green energy to UK consumers. And at the time, there was about 70, 80 employees, and we were in an air hangar in the Cotswolds. And I walked into this air hangar and thought, compared to some of the big corporate shiny roles, this feels like it's going to be a waste of my time. And then I met my owner-founder, and he had such a strong vision for HR and for people, the people function, and he had such a strong ambition for the business that I thought, actually, do you know what, I'm going to give this a go. And 5 years later, we are now 1,600 people.
Wow.
Across 4 offices, and we have coming up to 1 million customers in the UK. We've also had to pivot our business entirely so that we're much more of an end tech company. So it was definitely the right move because the last 5 years have felt probably more like 20 in terms of learning and development. So it's been really fun.
Amazing. What an amazing journey. and it's fantastic you used the power of the leader's vision to inspire you to join them and to grow the business where it is now. It's pretty amazing. So thanks for sharing that. Going back a step, why HR? What is it around psychology? Did you say you studied psychology? Sorry, I got that right? What was it around psychology and HR? I understand the link between HR and psychology, of course, but what was it about that stood out to you?
So I think why psychology and why people? Just because of pure interest. I just found it fascinating. And when I was going off to university, I just wanted to study something that was interesting, basically. No career aspirations whatsoever. I just wanted to do something fun. The link between the psychology and the HR. At the time, so this was about 5 years ago, I didn't really know anyone else that had made the transition from being pure psychology with no CIPD, no HR generalist experience at all, to leading a talent and people function in a business. So, and now I think there's lots of examples out there. Some people doing some really great things. At the time, it felt like, goodness, I'm missing this huge chunk, but I think it was actually really beneficial because it meant that I looked at talent and HR from an individual and psychology perspective, rather than thinking about the process or the compliance with stuff that perhaps I probably should have paid a bit more attention to. Luckily, we've managed to get through unscathed.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've seen that shift as well. Because I've even spoke to HR leaders that have gone as far as to say that they would rather have someone with who sort of raw skills than actually have CIPD qualifications. I've actually seen people go the opposite way around, whereas they don't really look at that anymore. That's not, or it isn't. It is considered obviously that you have those qualifications, but in the past it was like a must-have, and now the world's very changed dramatically. Similarly, with the fact that most companies now aren't saying you have to have a degree to get an interview, very outdated processes, especially with some of the jobs that they have those in front of as well. So very interesting. So where we are today, then, obviously you've seen the business go through such a transformation and growth. What really occupies your mind on a day-to-day basis now?
It's a really interesting question. So I think that so we've repivoted from we are still a utility, so we still provide energy to our consumers. But really, the margins in that business are incredibly slim. In order to, it's a very obviously it's the pure definition of a commodity, and so therefore, in order to keep costs low to our consumers, we're looking for other revenue streams which are much more around exciting emerging technology in energy. And that's really exciting because it gives a real sense of purpose for our employees. So helping, one of our missions of one of our divisions is to help to get more renewable energy onto the grid, which is fantastic. Our average age here is 27, so people are really inspired by that type of vision, which is fantastic. The things that worry me about that are finding the talent. So in such emerging technologies.
Sure.
So I've always talked about kind of pure, as you just mentioned, raw talent being much more important than qualifications, and also more important than experience. But in these particular
you need that skill set, yeah.
Skill set. So it's kind of trying to balance that, and also know it's obviously it's the war for talent's everywhere, and it's a really cliched phrase.
That's true.
True. Yeah. So that definitely keeps me awake. We're also we've just been through a reorganisation where we have been really brave and embraced, well, actually, I say really brave for us, probably not for your audience, because I know that a lot of people are going this way, but it's brave for us. We reorganised into almost entirely cross-functional squad working, and we tried to take out any, I guess, horizontal stripes that go across the org chart that essentially aren't aligned to value creation for the business. And so that has obviously in areas that are used to doing that, so product, tech, commercial and so forth, obviously that's just their day-to-day, that's how they normally work. But bringing the rest of the employee base along with us on that journey is definitely still a challenge for us. So HR as an example, so saying to my HR team, we should, whilst we should absolutely have our own vision and have our own principles, we should really take more of our business objectives from the value creation areas, so from our MDs, rather than pushing through our own agenda for the sake of it. So we should really, we need to really pivot the way we think about goal setting and about the work we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important, making sure that you align yourselves to the business and making sure you're having the most impact where it's needed in the organization, rather than just doing a bit of everything, which a lot of always do, just focus on those key, what are the things that we can contribute towards that are going to have the biggest impact on the business as well.
Using the sorry.
Go on, sorry.
So using the HR example, previously we had the typical type of HR metrics: attrition, sickness, etc. And what we're trying to do with the HR team is to say, actually, whilst it's important that we don't have incredibly high attrition or incredibly high sickness, if that's not the most important thing to the business, that we shouldn't push that agenda unless it fits in with the business priorities. So it's that subtle but important shift, not just for HR, but for all of these, I guess, support teams or agency type teams where we are facilitating delivery value. So it's been a really interesting process.
Yeah, well, that's where HR comes into play, to being more strategic value add when you're focusing on those areas. Of course, all the other areas are very important, but where you guys can have the biggest impact to the organization would be within the other areas, aligning yourself with the different departments and helping those guys out. So very, very interesting. And as you said about the shift, it's always going to take a bit of time, right? The culture shift that's going to come with changing the way your business is aligned, it's just going to be an ongoing thing, right? It's never a week, a month, or even a year. In many cases, just an ongoing, and slowly but surely the culture really will adapt to that, and it will just be like the normal process within the organization. So very exciting. So moving forward then, what could you share perhaps a project or transformation that you've been through that stands out to you that you're most excited about?
Sure. So related to the previous answer around moving to more cross-functional, empowered networks of teams. So as we started to make this transition, and we've been, as you say, it's been going on for a couple of years now, we started to have some issues. So people were saying, actually, I'm not sure how the goals of these squads align to the company vision. I like the idea of empowering our teams to say this is our problem space, and now we're going to self-organise into where we can add most value. So the senior team were saying, I like the idea of that, but actually, how is it going to work in practice, and how are we going to align the effort of our business to our strategy, and also just really practical stuff like, how can I see who's in which squad? Because these guys are all cross-functional, and I've got a spreadsheet that's telling me who's in which squad, and then I've got a Jira board and a Trello board, and then everything's a bit of a mess. So because I work for an owner-founder, and because we're an entrepreneurial business, I was really lucky in that I got permission to hire a software development team, and we set about providing a software solution to those problems. As I mentioned before, our average age is pretty young, and so we wanted to do something that was software enabled, because that's how our population like to interact. So we built a platform, we called it Just Three Things, because
that's what it's called, Just Three Things.
Well, Just Three Things.
That's cool. I like that.
Because the idea is that anyone can create a cross-functional team. They give their team a name. They obviously display the members and who the lead is, and then they give their top 3 priorities, typically in the form of goals. And we do our goals once every 6 months, but we have a quarterly check-in. So they'll set their goals for the half. They can set more than 3, but they can only show 3 priorities. And that was to stop everyone having this massive list of to-do things. They can also do status updates to inform all their stakeholders on how they're doing. And that means that they stop having to send emails out and end-of-week reports and all that horrible admin that bogs everyone down. And really importantly for us, it got round one of our biggest objections in the more traditional areas of the business, which was, if I'm a line manager and I'm managing somebody, but they're working for somebody else in a squad, how can I coach them? How do I know what they're doing? How can I be effective in my job? Which means I feel threatened, and therefore I'm going to be negative. So allowed us to really empower those people to have those great conversations with their direct reports, even if they're not setting their goals. So even if they're being more of a coach. So we rolled the platform out, started the rollout in 2016, and because we've got a software team and a UX team, we sit with our users, which means that we talk to them every day, and we try to improve the functionality all the time. And our users, so we've got about 80% of the company are monthly active users, and they estimate that the platform saves them about 3 hours a week, because it's entirely transparent. They can look up who's who. They can sit in a meeting and say, oh, I've heard this Project Orion or some silly name. They can put it into the platform and find out what that is and which squads you're working on it and so forth. And also, they don't have to bother with all their stakeholder updates anymore. So for me, that's been probably a really exciting project, both professionally, because it's increased the effectiveness and productivity of Ovo, but also personally, because getting to run a software engineering team has been really fun.
Sure, that's amazing. I'm jealous. As well, I have a few questions. So I had so many questions running through my head while you were talking about it. It's pretty amazing. How do you, or have a few, but they're in no particular order, how do you hold people accountable on that?
Sure. So people, it's really clear that which squad you're
In
in.
terms of achieving your objectives on there, or is there anyone that monitors that in terms of did people achieve those 3 objectives in there?
So it's a really good question. We really try. So they have to obviously update their progress.
Yes.
They can link to data sources to have automatic updates as well, so that it's like completely accurate data. I guess probably 2 things. First of all, we've really tried to empower the squads and individuals to say, actually, do you know what? If you decide as a team that your priorities aren't right, then you should be empowered to swap them out. Because the system,
of course,
there's a self-balancing in there. It's a bit like having peer review in science journals, because you can make an audacious claim, but actually because it's all transparent, someone else will say, hang on a second, that's not right. So we kind of rely on the self-leveling of the system a little bit.
That makes sense, because everyone can see it, right?
Exactly, everyone can see it. And also they're doing the same updates to their stakeholders that they would do normally, and their stakeholders are holding them to account in the same way that they would. It's
pretty obvious if they've not done anything, because it's not updates, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And do you have user permissions in terms of, for example, because I'm sure is there certain areas that only the senior leaders can see?
No, it's completely transparent. So
that's really cool.
So you can set a private goal, but we really try and encourage people not to, like, unless it's...
So people at the bottom can see the goals of the people at the top of your business.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And all the way through. So, for example, one of our execs set a goal to have a coaching session with all of his direct reports once every 2 weeks. And people.
So he has to hold himself accountable, right?
Yeah. People comment like jokingly and say, "Hey, dude, where's my one-to-one?"
I absolutely love this. Because there's no. From a cultural standpoint, it's incredible because it connects everyone seamlessly, and it also. It doesn't seem like you're at the bottom, I'm at the top of the business. There's an us. You can demonstrate the why of the business and your mission statement through the software as well. That's really cool. I would be sitting there just looking around the organization at what different people are doing all the time. That's really interesting. So for you, what's been the key benefits and takeaways for you now after it's been implemented for some time?
So I think one of the key things is I know that I'm talking to a lot of people who are saying, look, what's their feedback? Yeah, that's what I meant. I'll make my question a bit better. What's the feedback of the employees on it? Yeah. So I think that so first of all, the empowering piece is really positive. So that's the most positive piece, because there's nothing worse, and we've all been there, and it happens to everyone all the time. You're thinking, actually, do you know what? There is a better way of solving this, or actually, what I really should be working on is this. But then you've got to check up the hierarchy, and then your boss has got to check the exec team, and then you come all the way back down, and you get told your piece of work, and it's so non-motivating. Mm-hmm. Whereas actually, people can genuinely say, look, I feel empowered to say, I know the business strategy because I can see it. I know what the goals of the exec team are because I can see them. I can see everything else that's going on, and then I can readjust my own priorities accordingly. Because the other thing that the system does is it asks the users to link their goals to other people, so to look at dependencies in the system. And then if anyone else changes their priorities, obviously it's going to have a knock-on effect in the network. And so it just basically informs other people. So instead of having to go up a hierarchy, have an exec co-meeting, come all the way down, it empowers people to actually get that information at their fingertips and have that conversation peer-to-peer, rather than having to rely on management.
It's a world away from how most businesses operate. You're in marketing, so you're in, like, for example, in my last business that I worked in for 10 years, it was like, you're in sales, you don't need to know anything about any other area of the business. You just stick to what you do. And if you ever tried to get involved, and I always tried to get involved in production and marketing, I really loved that stuff. And it was like, Chris, you don't need to know any of this information. What happens in the finance team, no one needs to know. What happens in the marketing team, no one needs to know. And it just put a divide between all of the functions in the organization. Sales stayed with sales, marketing stayed with sales, IT stayed with IT, and no one integrated at all.
Yeah.
So there's no innovation. No, all of the amazing feedback that my team's getting from all of our customers isn't getting to anyone else in the business. So I think you creating a tool like that, I am really that's I don't say it often, but that sounds really cool. I'd love to have a look at that in more detail.
I'd love to show you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be fantastic. Yeah, I think
Wow.
one of the things that we're really passionate about both in the talent function, but also in the UX and software development team that are helping me with this product, is that the person that's the best place to decide what they work on is the individual. So the idea of a manager telling someone what to do, it's just so horrid, because ultimately the individual knows the problem space the most, because or the team,
Yes.
the person actually doing the doing. And so we're trying to empower the people that can actually affect the most change. And actually that isn't just being nice and fluffy, it's because we genuinely feel that it will make the business more effective and more more valuable as a business. So it's not just a kind of me being a socialist, although my CEO
it's just huge culturally. That's such a huge shift from traditional thinking or business operation, isn't it? So far. Are you using this are you tying this into your reward and recognition as well? Because you can obviously clearly see people's work and performance.
Yeah.
Are you integrating that?
Yes. So in terms of recognition, that happens really organically, because you can leave comments on anyone's profile, so either as an individual or as a team, and that just started happening really organically. Like the CEO would go onto a team and say, "Hey guys, this is great work this week, and really well done," and that emails out everyone in the team, but it also appears in everyone's news feeds that the CEO's done this. So
wow, yeah.
Quite organic. And then in terms of the more formal reward, I'll be really honest, we're slightly behind the curve on reward. We still do 6 monthly performance reviews, which I know is where we definitely need to look at it. So we use Workday as the HR system, and we essentially have an API between Just Do Things and
sure.
And we push out the information from the achievements for the year back into Workday. A couple of things on that. We allow individuals to select what they want to put into Workday for their appraisal, because again, we want to empower them. We don't want to say to them, look, we're just going to do this to you. We want you to have the selection and the choice. So you can choose what you'd like to put in. Although if you choose not to put something in, it's all transparent. So you may as well. And then the second thing is people have been really positive about it, because instead of just having a look at their performance in the beginning of the half, and then
exactly, you can see everything. Yeah, I really like when you do get around to doing that. It's gonna be very interesting, because you can see one of the things that I don't like about the appraisals is that it's very one-dimensional. People's needs change throughout the whole year, not even 6 months or 12 months. The job changes, the needs of the business change. And you may set a set of training, they need some training on this, and then a few months later that's almost outdated and irrelevant by that point. As well, with a system with what you have, you can monitor that in real time. And then help them as and when they need that, and also reward and recognize them as and when it happens. And the fact that you can, I can only imagine in my last company being a very junior salesperson and getting a message from a CEO saying great job, and it being seen by the entire business. That does huge things for people's confidence, and you won't need to motivate people. They'll be motivating themselves. They'll be going the extra mile because they know it's gonna be recognized by all, not just their manager or the team, but everyone around them. So I really like it. Really like. And you said before we move on, you said as well you may be launching this as a product, right?
Yeah, so this came about when I spoke at a conference last year, and in the Q&A someone said, have you ever considered this as a commercial product? And my answer was, well, no, because we built this to try to solve a very specific problem for Ovo, and in order to make Ovo more effective. But I said, it's an interesting question. I'm very happy to chat to you about it afterwards. And I kind of came off the stage, and I had about 10 people. And I was like, oh, you're waiting for me. Hi. And people were saying, we've got really similar problems and issues. In
everyone, I can tell you right now, I speak to HR leaders every day. They all have the same problem.
Yeah, so like, oh, great. So they started saying, look, is there any way of us having a go on this? So it wasn't that difficult for us to separate the infrastructure. The thing we had to be careful with was obviously data security, because
sure, yeah.
their data on. So we set up a separate holding company just so that we can make sure that the people working on the product are working for Ovo, so that if and then we started giving it out to companies and saying, tell us your thoughts, have a go. So we at the moment we go out to about 10, and people are saying, look, this is really helping us. So the plan at the moment is to continue just giving it to companies for free, and say, can we talk to you about whether it works for you, whether it meets your need, and if it does, and it goes well, then sometime this year, potentially in the summer, we might look at it as a different business and a commercial product, which is really exciting.
Wow. You guys are going to end up like Amazon and just have loads of different products in all different areas. Nothing to do with their original. But that's the way things are moving now. That is exactly the way things are moving now. You have to keep innovating, and that'll be an amazing achievement for you personally, but also the business, to have other organizations using that. And if it's working for you guys, it's almost to me like a no-brainer. What I'm listening to hear from you and from the conversations I have every single day with leaders all over the world, to give their organization that type of transparency, and to give their employees that empowering their employees in that way, and allowing communication across the business seamlessly, and getting rid of that hierarchical sort of type of operation that's pretty outdated. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm glad I asked you that question now.
Thanks for your
Thanks for sharing. Could you, obviously, I'm sure from when you started in HR to where we are now, there's been a big shift. And you meant technology, of course, has been a big part of that. How do you keep yourself up to date with current events? So do you have, for example, are you looking into sort of HR analytics, workforce analytics, or in harnessing technology in the business?
Yeah, so we're certainly looking into analytics. So we've one of our MDs, actually, now he was our data science director. He comes from Facebook on the data side, and he's also just really passionate about the human capital. Human capital, it sounds so impersonal. He calls it human capital.
It is a terminology, but yeah.
So he's really helping us to look differently at our data. So I think before we did a lot of things like correlations. Does a specific selection methodology equal better performance? And it was also kind of 2D. Whereas I think that we need to get much better at thinking about our employees in the same way that we would think about our customers.
Exactly.
So we've got big teams at Ovo, really helping us to understand and predict the nuanced needs of our customers, and yet we don't necessarily have that as much on the people side. So I think that's something we definitely need to invest more in. Fantastic.
And now, how long have you had Workday for? You said you had how long have you had that?
So about coming up to 12 months.
Oh wow! So you're new into the game. There's almost too much functionality there. So it's one step at a time.
Yeah. It was quite a big shift for us, because it was the first time. So before that we had a really small HCM suite, and this was a big shift because we were quite fluid with our processes, and we took we tried to take quite a kind of adult relationship with people, like things like expenses. If you wouldn't be embarrassed telling a customer that you spent it, then you just spend it. But obviously with Workday, you've got to build in process and so forth. So it has been quite a shift for us, which has had both advantages and disadvantages, I think.
Yeah, same for everyone else. Don't worry, you're not alone. You're not alone on that journey. What have you, in terms of the leadership in the business? I think a big part of the success of HR leaders is being able to communicate and build relationships internally. What have you found to be the most effective way to engage with your senior leadership team and the other line managers?
So I think before I joined Ovo, I used to, as a business psychologist, obviously I was working for a consultancy, and they used to give like blurb on the consultants, and they'd say highly commercial and business achievement. It wasn't. I didn't have a clue. I genuinely didn't have a clue. The only clue I'd have is something with these kind of CEOs of big corporates, and they chuck out all these kind of acronyms, and I'd be writing them down and not having a clue. Sitting on the exco of I guess first of all a scaling business, but secondly a quite an entrepreneurial business, has been amazing for me personally in terms of just helping me to develop my the real commerciality, not just the pretend commerciality. And I find that actually, I've got good relationships with the senior team here, because they're fun and great, but also because I hope that I try to talk their language. So I would never go in and ask for a specific project or to do a specific initiative unless I could quite quickly link it back to the business strategy, what we're trying to achieve, and so forth. So just three things. For me, I'm really passionate about the employee engagement effects. For my exco, I talk a lot about the productivity gain. So I try really hard to put it into language that would make sense for them.
Yeah. And for other leaders sort of on that journey, then how did you achieve that then? Was it sort of developing yourself outside of the organization, researching these areas, understanding the business, or really was it just learning whilst you did it?
I would love to say that I've been really diligent and spent a lot of time reading MBA in 10 days. We spent too much time down the pub. So no, I think it was just genuinely living
on the job. Yeah.
I guess the grounding in the business psychology did help, because a lot of the stuff that I thought I knew that I didn't really, I can now actually understand. And we were in a really privileged position in that we would be sitting in on board meetings and so forth of big corporates, because we were there to look at the dynamics of the board. So you'd hear a lot of stuff, but I didn't really comprehend it until I really had to make some decisions myself. And now I can kind of go back and say, oh, okay, that's what they were trying to do. So I probably had, the other way around would have been better. But
yeah, I think you hit the most important thing is the fact that you were aware that you could link back their priorities and use your skills within HR and the HR department to help them achieve that. As long as you're always linking back to business needs, strategic needs to HR, then you're going to be successful, and they're going to be pretty happy as well. So where do you see the biggest opportunity then for improvement in the business?
In Ovo specifically?
Yeah, where do you see the biggest area of improvement?
With regard to the talent agenda, I think that there's probably, we've been so focused on both recruitment, because obviously we've grown significantly, and also on the organisational design side, so that's my phone, that there's probably other areas of the talent strategy that we've left behind. So performance appraisal, definitely, I hate the fact that I'm embarrassed by the fact we have an appraisal every 6 months, for all the reasons you talked about earlier. There's lots of areas of our talent strategy that I'd like to look at in more detail. In terms of the business as a whole, I think that our kind of big strategic opportunities are in some of the emerging technology around renewables. Electric vehicles at the moment are obviously quite sparse, but we're banking on the fact on all the predictions that.
No, you are definitely. That's a safe bet. I don't think that's a risky bet at all. I think you're only going to get better there. So it's fine.
So I'm really excited about all the stuff we're doing in that space. We're doing some really exciting stuff, which is around helping the national grid, to get more renewables on by allowing them overspill space into distributed batteries. And obviously, an electric vehicle is just a battery on wheels. So the idea is that you can help the grid to balance itself, which will allow more renewables onto the grid, which is a really exciting space to be in, because it feels like it's something that could help us grow the business, but it also feels like it's a real force for good without sounding really, really cheesy. So I'm excited about some of the opportunities for the business as well.
There's a very exciting space that you guys are working in. I'm thinking about buying another house, and one of the things I was thinking of, I want to buy a power wall for my. I want a power wall. I want a Tesla power wall so badly. I know there's a massive waiting list, but I want a Tesla power wall. It's so cool.
Roof tiles as well.
Yeah, and then now, the what's that other company called that does the roof tiles?
God,
it's also owned by Elon Musk. My friends are going to kill me now for not knowing what it is. But yeah, so
my boss is going to kill me for not knowing what it is.
No, yeah, they're finally producing the tiles now. The Solar City. That's the name.
Of course. Yeah,
Solar City. Yeah. So that combined with the power wall, and every now in the past you walk outside the office, you see a few Teslas and you see a few electric cars. Now I've seen them every day. They've just opened up a Tesla shop right next to my house, which is like, well, okay. So you guys are in an amazing space. Are you guys doing anything in the IoT space?
Yeah, so we've got the highest penetration of smart meters per customer base of any provider in the UK. So we're ahead of the game in terms of smart devices for smart meters.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of other devices, not at this stage. So we're focusing more on the kind of EVs, batteries, solar kind of strategy. It's been an interesting journey watching the adoption of Internet of Things connected devices. It hasn't been as quick as I think people predicted it to be.
No, it's slow, but the people that are, like, I'm a hardcore with it. Like, my entire house is connected. Every single light bulb's Wi-Fi, every single radiator, every single plug is Wi-Fi, every single switch, even the TV. I literally don't even use a remote now. I just go and say channel 1, turn on, do this. Yeah, everything. Even my computer, I walk in a room, and as I walk in, the sensor sees me coming, my computer turns on, the light turns a certain color. It's upset. But then there's some people that's a million miles away for them.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing is that it's now got to a point where the price is come down.
Yeah. Who's your energy provider, Chris?
I don't know.
Customer.
My wife deals with that. I've already had that. I actually don't know the answer to that question. I have no idea. That is my. I have no idea what energy provider we use. All I know is we use a lot of electric.
Yeah.
I have an apartment, right? So there's no gas either. Everything's electric. So I have a penthouse apartment. So it's all electric as well. So maybe I should be just talking to you guys then. See who we have. I have no idea. I feel really bad to say that. Actually, I have no idea who we have. But yeah,
you're gonna have a look. I'm taking over the world one customer at a time.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to a company yesterday called Sage Glass, owned by Saint-Gobain, and they make this really cool glass that basically is connected to your Alexa, for example. And you can say, you walk in a room and say turn glass to 90%, and it will turn, like, dim the glass to 90%, and it can tell outside if it's hot. It will automatically dim the glass, and it can save you up to 60% of your heating bill. So when your house is cold, it lets more UV in. When it's not, it's out. So all those type of things combined with the stuff your guys are doing, it's very exciting. So you guys are in a very exciting business to work in as well. So we should get off topic now. We could just talk about that all day. Well, look, that leads us quite nicely onto the quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
That's the pressure.
Whenever I say that part, everyone goes, what was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
Oh, my 30 seconds are ticking. Do you know what? It was probably confidence. I actually think that, don't get me started on the gender pay gap and equality and so forth, but I think that genuinely...
On International Women's Day of all days, you can go for it.
Of course it is, yes. So I think that because I didn't have the HR background, when I first came into Ovo, I've grown with the business. So I've been really lucky in that I feel that now I could look back at myself and say, it was an advantage not having that CIPD background, but actually I think at the time I was probably thought that I needed to know everything, and actually I think being a little bit older and having a bit more experience has allowed me to realise I genuinely don't need to know a third of what's going on, really.
Yeah. I think everyone shares the same feeling. Same with me when I decided to start my business. I had no idea how to run a business, but that was the exciting part. I was literally jumped out of the airplane and built my parachute on the way down. That's kind of the expression I love when I hear people say that. And in most people, the most successful people that I speak to, 99% of the time, that's exactly the feeling and that they have as well. So that's great. What's one book you'd recommend to our audience, and why?
So the first one that sprang to mind was just the most recent book that I read, which was Exponential Organizations by Michael Malone and a couple of others. And that I like that book because it talks about having an audacious purpose, which is something that I really believe in. And it's one of the reasons I joined Ovo. And it's also the reason probably that most of my colleagues joined Ovo. And it also talks around how technologies are reinventing kind of workplace practices and so forth. So I thought that was really exciting.
Fantastic. I'll definitely link that up in the description for everyone. What's the best piece of business advice that you've received?
Oh my goodness. This is quick fire with no prep. This is daunting. And, so probably when I think about business advice, slightly.
Could be any advice, by the way. It doesn't have to be business. It could be personal. It could be, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I could go for anything, cats, everything. And I think so when I was building Just Three Things with my software team, somebody I can't remember there's a saying around it, but basically around how the user is king. So I had a vision for what I wanted to build, and I'd never done this before. I didn't know what we obviously employed UX and we employed user searches and so forth, but actually to do it yourself and to really realize you might have a vision for a particular aspect, and then you show it to users and they say that doesn't work for us, and that idea that actually the person who you're delivering the value to should always have the say, and extrapolating that out to HR and our relationship with our employees. If something's not working for our employees, then it's not working. It's not that this is best practice or this is gold standard or this is the way that we're doing it. If this isn't working for our people, then it's just not working.
Great advice. Certainly great. I'm saying with us, whenever we launch a new product, we probably send out the first draft, and sometimes it comes back nothing like what it looked like in the first place. but it's really making sure that it resonates with our customers and with people, the people who are actually going to benefit from it. They're never wrong. And sometimes people do get caught up in their own idea of what things should look like, or you think, I know this is how it should be, but most of the time people are wrong. So I think that's a very important piece of advice. What's one thing about your business that most excites you?
I think that it is the mission of allowing more renewables onto the grid, really trying to be part of the one of the biggest problems that humanity will face is around how to get renewable energy more cheaply and more safely and more efficiently, and being part of what I feel is a really important problem. So I've worked for lots of different businesses, particularly consulting, and I think that everyone can find a passion and an angle in most missions, but for this one I genuinely feel that it's important to humanity, and so that's, I think, really exciting.
Yeah. Very powerful, and everyone can relate to it, or I assume everyone can relate to it. If they can't, then I don't know.
People who don't know who provides their energy.
Yeah. exactly I feel bad now. I'm gonna go check straight after this. Oh yeah, but look, well, you've been an amazing guest. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your journey with our listeners. I'm sure they'll be a lot better off for it, so thank you for that.
No, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Give our listeners one parting piece of guidance, and also the best way to get in contact with you if they wish to reach out.
Goodness, one parting piece of guidance. I think my career has been so varied and it's been so exciting. And I think that for me, it's been around just never stop learning. I think that I used to think when I was younger that I would become an expert in something, and what I've realised is that the continual learning process, and as you say, putting yourself into a place where you're jumping off and having to build the parachute as you go, is what keeps life in every aspect exciting. So I guess my advice would be never stop learning, never kind of think that we've got it as a profession.
Fantastic.
Best way to get in touch with me will be kim.atherton@ovoenergy.com.
Fantastic. I'm warning you in advance. You're going to get a lot of emails, so don't blame me. I don't want to get an email. I don't want to get an email from you next week saying, Chris, what have you done to my inbox? Well, thank you very much. Guys, head over to hrdealers.com. There you'll find all of the show notes on the episode, links to everything we've been talking about. Do you have a website for the new product?
Yes, it's www.justthreethings.com.
Wow, I'm surprised you got that domain. That's impressive on its own.
As a number 3, probably.
Yeah, no, even better, because it's naturally I would think I would write that too. Perfect. Well, look, thank you very much for sharing your journey with us, and I wish you all the best until next week.